Hello, one and all. So, as you all know, The Hobbit, The Battle of Five Armies is literally right around the corner, and it is one of my most anticipated movies of the rest of the year. You know what I mean? It's the end of the Lord of the Rings movies in a way. And I kind of felt like in order to celebrate this, I wanted to talk about one of my all-time favorite trilogies of all time, which is the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Now, I'm not going to do a separate video on Fellowship of the Ring, Two Towers, and Return of the King. To be honest, I don't have time. Unfortunately, I don't, I'm I'm sidetracked with finals as it is. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna give you what I call a super review of just all Lord of the Rings movies into one video and try to condense everything down as much as possible for you guys. All right?
They are coming.
We must turn back!
So now we start with Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. Now, I saw The Fellowship of the Ring literally in the theaters right when it came out. I was 7 years old. And at that time, I hadn't seen a movie that was a huge event, basically. You know what I mean? Because at the time, I had seen movies in the theaters like the first X-Men and Tarzan and Bugs Life and Toy Stories and so forth. And even the first X-Men, it didn't feel like a big event, unfortunately, because at the time, if you like superhero movies, you're either it was because you were a kid, like a little kid, or you were a nerd, and obviously I was both of them, and I still am. You know what I mean? So, going into Lord of the Rings: Fellowship of the Ring, it was that one movie that everyone knew about it. You know what I mean? My mom and dad knew about it. My neighbors knew about it, and so forth. And I went into the theaters, and I was just so blown away by this movie. It was just it amazed me in every way, shape, and form. You know what I mean? So the story of like the Fellowship of the Ring is that there's this Stark Lord named Sauron who wants to take over Middle Earth, which is the world that this movie takes place in. So he forges this ring. This ring is called the Ring of Power, and the whole idea is that gives you power. You can turn invisible. You have like crazy strength that Sauron displays in the beginning of the movie. Only problem with Sauron dies, but because he created the ring, his soul is still alive in a lot of ways. So you jump into the Shire and you meet Frodo Baggins, played by Elijah Wood, who finds this ring, and Gandalf knows what it is. So he assembles a fellowship of dwarves, of men, and hobbits, and so forth, to go on this quest to go to Mount Doom and drop the ring of fire, and drop the ring into the pits of this volcano. You know what I mean? And that's pretty much what the whole movie is. It's pretty much the adventure. You know what I mean? And like I said, I'm gonna start by saying that I think Fellowship of the Ring is kind of the weakest of the three, to be honest with you. Just because the first half of the movie is all about the build-up, you know what I mean? And even right when the journey goes, nothing really sort of huge happens up until like the 2-hour mark of the movie or something like that. It's the hour and 40-minute mark, 2-hour mark, somewhere right there, you know what I mean? And in the extended edition, there's more of like the build-up leading up to it. Like you see like Sam and Frodo see elves in the woods at one point, and there's a lot more stuff in the Shire and so forth. That's pretty much what you get in the extended cut, and it's pretty cool. It's sort of the scenes are all about like strengthening the characters and getting some of their backstories, like Boromir and Arwen and Elrond and so forth. So it's pretty cool though. I mean, overall, The Fellowship of the Ring is basically your setup movie. It's the movie that sets up your characters, it sets up the world and so forth. And there are some really cool action sequences, but it's mostly the movie that sets up where the second and third one go, and that's really cool. You know what I mean? I really dig that. But yeah, just overall, I really like The Fellowship of the Ring. Even though I say it's the weakest of the trilogy, it's still a damn good movie. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna give The Fellowship of the Ring an A minus. Now we're gonna move on to my favorite of the trilogy, The Two Towers.
There will be no dawn for men.
After Fellowship of the Ring came out and it blew everyone's minds, The Two Towers came out a year later, and it's safe to say it blew everyone's minds even more this time around. You know what I mean? Like the story in this one is that members of the Fellowship are all separate and they're all going their own journeys. You know what I mean? In a very sort of Empire Strikes Back type of way. You know what I mean? And you've got Frodo and Sam who are being accompanied by Gollum to get to Mount Doom. You got Aragorn and Gimli and Legolas, along with like the men of Rohan, and you have Merry and Pippin with the tree with Treebeard and so forth, and you've just got all these stories and how they interlock and how they build character. You know what I mean? But aside from that, the movie is just amazing. You know what I mean? Like, you have the Battle of Helm's Deep, which in my opinion is the greatest battle I've ever seen. The battle's just awesome. It's rainy, it's gritty. Aragorn and Gimli are jumping on orcs like it's a mosh pit. It's awesome. You know what I mean? It's just everything really got stepped up more this time around. You know what I mean? It was no longer the build up to the build up to where the second and third one was going to go. This time around, it's just the build. It's just nonstop fun. You know what I mean? That's what makes it such a great sequel. You know what I mean? But the big standout of this movie is Gollum, and Gollum is being played by Andy Serkis, which I'm pretty sure you all know who Andy Serkis is by now. And if you don't, he played Caesar in the Planet of the Apes movies, and he played King Kong, and he's going to be in Avengers: Age of Ultron and Star Wars and so forth. And he literally blew everyone away. Not just in terms of like how he looked, because he was done with motion capture, and at the time motion capture had been used. I mean, used in video games, obviously, and it was used in movies and music videos. I remember it was used in a Michael Jackson music video. I forget which one. And motion capture had been used for Jar Jar Binks in Episode 1, but no one had really seen motion capture be used to create a dramatic character and still have people look beyond the effects and see like acting. You know what I mean? And that's really what the big achievement that The Two Towers made, and that was what its mark it made on cinema. You know what I mean? Was the idea that you could have actors be dramatic and yet look all digital. You know what I mean? That's why, you know, you see Mark Ruffalo be all motion captured for the Hulk. You know what I mean? And for the Hulk, and Benedict Cumberbatch be motion captured for Smaug in the Hobbit films, because those actors can still act, but yet look you know, completely different. You know what I mean? And it still baffles me how the Academy never nominated Andy Serkis for his work in Lord of the Rings or in, you know, the Apes movies, to be honest. You know what I mean? But just overall, The Two Towers is just exciting. It's action packed. It's got a lot of emotion to it, especially the speech at the very end of the movie just hits you right there. You know what I mean? And at the end, the whole movie just makes you want to take out your Two Towers Extended Edition DVD and just put in the Return of the King DVDs. Which, speaking of the extended for Two Towers DVD, there's some stuff added to it that, like Fellowship of the Ring, it does strengthen the characters. You know what I mean? Like Eowyn and Saruman and so forth, and that's pretty cool. In fact, and Faramir, who has, in my opinion, the scene that shouldn't have been cut out of the movie. It's a flashback that does tie both Fellowship of the Ring and Return of the King together. You know what I mean? That's the one scene that I really wish Peter Jackson hadn't cut out. You know what I mean? For the Two Towers Extended Edition. So yeah, I mean, the movie, The Two Towers, is, like I said, it's my favorite of the franchise. I suggest if you haven't watched it yet, watch it. You know what I mean? So I'm going to give The Two Towers an A. Yeah, and now we move on to the finale, The Return of the King.
You will have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to you.
And in the rare world where the third movie is as good as the first two movies, The Return of the King meets one of those rarities. You know what I mean? The Return of the King is basically just a movie that is all about the war. You know what I mean? It is the war between Middle-earth versus Sauron. You know what I mean? That is basically what the movie is about. It's actually, technically, since I have the extended edition, it's a 4-hour epic of nothing but just of an incredible battle. You know what I mean? And it is such a satisfying movie in that regard. You know what I mean? It's just, it's epic. There's no other way to describe it. You know what I mean? Just the size of it is incredible. The battle sequences are amazing. The effects are top notch. Just everything about this movie was great. You know what I mean? And even if you take out all the battle sequences you have just these great characters. You know what I mean? You have Frodo and Sam, and seeing how the ring has been taking a toll on Frodo and how it's been really scarring him. And you have Aragorn, who really shows that he is a king. He has the king. He really shows his leadership in this movie, and he's always doing these great, incredible speeches and so forth. And just, it's an incredible movie in a lot of ways, and it's understandable why it won the Oscar for Best Picture, because it is incredible. And the movie just has so much epicness. It's insane. Like, the first 2 hours of the movie is nothing but the build up to the war. It's about them setting things up and heading out and everything like that. And the second half is just the straight up battles. It's incredible. You know what I mean? But I still think the Battle of Helm's Deep is my favorite Battle of the Lord of the Rings movies, just because the Battle of Helm's Deep is just gritty. You know what I mean? And it's and the thing about the Battles of the Lord of the Rings movies is that they're really great, though. They're really big and stylistic, but they're not gritty like the Battle of Helm's Deep. You know what I mean? At least that's how I feel. You know what I mean? And the biggest criticism this movie does have is the way the movie ends, because people say, you know, way too many endings, blah blah blah. And I didn't mind it, you know what I mean? I feel like it's Peter Jackson's way, albeit a very long way, of wrapping things up and giving every character their own piece of closure, you know what I mean? And it is pretty teary towards the end of the movie. Like, the last 5 minutes or so is it gets you pretty teared up. But overall, The Return of the King is a satisfying conclusion to an epic trilogy, you know what I mean? It's like, I feel like the Lord of the Rings trilogy is like right up there with the Dark Knight trilogy, the Toy Story trilogy, the Star Wars original trilogy, and the Back to the Future trilogy. Just these three movies being nothing but incredible. You know what I mean? And gotta give props to Peter Jackson, J.R.R. Tolkien for doing this. You know what I mean? Just, oh God, I can't wait for Battle of Five Armies. But anyway, so yeah, Return of the King gets an A. So that's my thoughts on all three Lord of the Rings movies. What are your favorites? How would you rate them in order? And how are you looking forward to the Battle of Five Armies? That's a big question. And I'm going to give you my review of the Hobbit and Unexpected Journey next week. So stay tuned.